Let's go back to you talk about Trayvon Martin. What was your impression with what happened with George Floyd? Was that any different than Trayvon, or was it the same?
I see niggas like
patterns
George Floyd all the time, on the corner, on the street. Was not a hero. Was not. Can we talk about his death being tragic? Yes. I mean, of course, no one deserves to die. But is this someone I'm going to burn down my own areas? Is this somebody that's relatable to me? Especially at this time, I was 20 years old, working. This is before I went in the Army. This wasn't somebody I can relate to. This is a pawn of a movement to get black people energized and energetic for an election. When people talk about, when the president talks about they stole the election, I don't think that they did it through the ballots or anything. I think they did it through the emotion with COVID and George Floyd. That's a better argument than, they were doing something with the ballots, Joe Biden. I don't think so, Mr. President. I think they use this to get you out of office, as they'll do with anything. They use black people as a weapon in this country. And this weapon is very good. We've seen it. It goes back to Rosa Parks. Rosa Parks didn't have no business being on that bus today. Bitch had a husband with a car. She didn't have no business being on a bus. This was all orchestrated. But they don't want to talk about Claudette Colvin, the actual young woman that stopped and ended segregating busing in the 1950s and 1960s. They don't want to talk about her because she was dark-skinned. And she had a child at 16 years old because she was raped by a black man. The NAACP didn't want to highlight that. The NAACP, as we know, was not entirely ran and organized and for the benefit of black people, but had the image and the symbol of an organization stand up for black people.
This is what name? What was her name?
Claudette Colvin.
Rob, can you pull that up?
Yep. 15 years old. 15 years old, single mother, raped, on her way to work, and was kicked off the bus.
By a black man.
Raped by a black man, yeah. They didn't want to highlight that case. But they chose Rosa, who was mixed race, lighter skin, came from upper middle class, black and respected family. They used her as the image. No one talks about Claudette Colvin. I'm sure a lot of black people don't know who Claudette Colvin is. They know who Rosa Parks is. Rosa Parks, that was orchestrated. That was an entire event orchestrated by the NAACP, coupled and funded by many Jewish organizations that wanted to push this, the ADL and so on, that wanted to push this idea and push this image rather than pushing the truth of what was going on. Because it would have talked about, of course, the segregated busing, which is a problem, but also the crime and the pain from other black people inflicted on black women and black children. They couldn't do that at that time. So that goes back, that's the original hoax, racial hoaxes right there, Rosa Parks. Never had any respect. Grandfather was never a fan of Rosa Parks or MLK. Never respected them.
Never respected Rosa Parks or MLK?
No.
Why not MLK?
MLK with the integration. Grandfather grew up in the South, grew up in Virginia. So he knew about segregation, Jim Crow.
Mm-hmm.
Going into in Navy medicine, he had to take the test about 3 times because they didn't think that he passed with such high scores. I think he was only 12 blacks were in the class. I think he was one of 2 that passed. They didn't think he passed at all. So he knew about of course, the racial animosity, racial pain from segregation, Jim Crow. But it goes back to what I said, building your own. MLK was more of, I want to blend in and ask for the handout and the seat at the table. Grandfather was the mindset, I'm going to make my own table. I'm going to make my own chair. Then I'll make the roof and the walls, the foundation, and we'll sit in it. And we traded what could have been that for now, the handout. Goes back to the government assistance. We get the handout. Goes back to the reparations. We want the handout rather than building it our own. Black people love to talk about the black dollar. The black dollar is so powerful. We got $1 trillion in black spending power. You don't do any damn thing with it. You spend it on what? You flash the money, having kids flash money so they can get killed. You spend it on music that talks about killing your own and destroying your own. We're not spending on what we need. And in the black businesses that do get brought up and raised up, they get destroyed by other black people. That's what comes back to the niggas and the niggers conversation.
Who right now agrees with you? Like when you're talking about, you said you don't agree with Tatum. Some of the things you guys are probably on the same page with, you and Tatum.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about what Stephen A. is doing? Some of the things he's talking about.
I like Stephen A. Here's the thing.
Stephen A.
is
in trouble
fantastic.
all the time, by the way.
He does. Stephen is great in terms of what he represents. Each of these guys are great in what they represent. But is it relatable to the average person? I live in Detroit. I could take the money I got from the military, my VA home loan and so on, right? And moved out to the whitest area, got a nice home, a house in the suburbs. I didn't. I came back to my community and came back to my city. When I left Fort Bragg and I drove all the way up to Detroit by myself, long drive. Coming back home and seeing how the city is and how my people are, I thought it would be different. No, it's still the same, if not worse. Where are these people like Stephen A? Where are the people like Brandon Tatum and so on? Where are the people, what's the other guy, Xavier, he's with PragerU, all these black conservatives, where are they? These are people who are completely isolated from the actual issues. They talk about all the high-level stuff, but the low-level stuff of the crime, the culture, they're not willing to have an aggressive conversation in the way that I'm trying to have a conversation. I think that I know that having this conversation on being aggressive and combating this culture that is destructive to our future, to our survival, is necessary. There's no soft conversation.
So you're saying, if they're real, live with the people that are going through the problem. Mm-hmm. So you ever planning on making millions?
I would hope, yes.
Okay.
As an American, I would hope, right?
When you do, are you going to stay where you're at, or would you move out?
I would stay where I'm at.
You stay where you are?
Yes. I encourage every black man, anyone that has anything, buy your own in your own area and stay in your own area. Why am I going to run to the suburbs? Why? I get it, the crime. I get it. I don't want niggas stealing from me either. Shoot them dead. Defend your own area.
Shoot them dead?
Yeah, 1,000%. Someone comes and takes yours and takes in your community. This is the problem. We don't want to have a conversation. This is an aggressive conversation we've got to have. Are we going to allow people in our community to steal and take from us? No, we shouldn't. Why do we have so many thieves in our community? Because we give them a pass to steal. We encourage them to do so. We don't put the hammer down and say enough is enough. Because like I said, at the end of the day, the businesses that lose the most are black businesses. When we talk about what happened with the Rick Child case, the black kid that was accused of stealing from the store, he had dealt with black people stealing from the store all the time. I can go to stores in Detroit right now and show you how people act and treat the owners of the store, Arab, Asian, even black. I've seen black people who work with the Arab gas stations or liquor stores, and they get treated like shit. Mm-hmm. Oh, you black, you working, you a coon, you back there working with them. What you mean working with them, working a job, nigga? Is that a problem? Having something? Because when we have it our own, prices have to be high, and we steal from it. And we go in and think, well, you got to give it to me because you black too. I can't get it for free. I've heard this growing up. I've watched this as a kid, that this is the mentality. This isn't something I'm making up because I live in these areas. The people we're talking about, the people on the right, they don't live in these areas. They're completely isolated from it. And this is why they're not winning. They're not relatable. Now, am I the most relatable person in the world? Of course not. I have my flaws. I'm not perfect. Mm-hmm. But what I represent is somebody who lives in these areas, that sees the problem, knows the problem, can point it out, and can speak to these people. I love when I go around Detroit and people recognize me. I love your content, man. Black, white, doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. I'm always downtown Detroit every weekend. I love to walk around. That's what I love to do. I go anywhere I want because I don't have any fear in this. People love to say black people special on Twitter. You fearful about going out in Detroit. Oh, you probably hiding somewhere. You probably live in the suburb. I don't. I live in Detroit, downtown to be exact. And I go to the same place I grew up. And I wave to the people who know me. And I can walk from the house I sat back and was born and raised in to any gas station, any store in that area. And ain't nobody gonna say anything to me other than, hey, hello, how's your mom doing? If they haven't seen me in 2 years, how's your granddad doing? He passed away about 2 years ago. That's how I'm represented. And I will continue to be represented in that way. I don't have any fear in what I'm saying because I know I'm right.
What political aspirations do you have?
Given the controversy, and especially with me being very critical of the Israeli lobby and Jewish power, I would say that as much as I would love to run for office, I think there would be a lot holding me back given those things. However, if I could run, I'd probably run for mayor of Detroit. The highest I would go is governor. If privileged, if I was ever approached by anyone, if I could ever see the presidency, I would love to. Senator, House of Rep, I would love to. Hi, I'm Andre Williams, constantly critical of black culture, black fatigue, calling out the problems within our community across this country. If you want to reach out to me, you can reach me on Connect.
If you enjoyed this video, you want to watch more videos like this, click here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click here.